Thank you. Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Gloucester Mayor Greg Verga. And as your mayor, I'm honored, grateful, and humbled to welcome all of you this afternoon and to thank you for your presence here at Gloucester's Overture 2023. I think that's the right year. So let's begin this historic overture to 2023 with the formal opening ceremony. So please stand.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Could you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, please be seated. It is with great respect that I invite Rabbi David Kudian from the Temple Ahavat Akim to the stage to offer an invocation.
Good afternoon. We gather as people of many faiths and traditions, united in our belief in the high ideals and founding values of our nation. This weekend we honor the life and legacy of the great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. It is our task to carry forward Dr. King's sacred work, to continue the struggle for civil rights, for justice, for equity in our nation, in our state, and in our city. As we prepare to mark the long and storied history of this city of Gloucester, there is much to celebrate and much to learn, much to laud, and much to know that will impel us to work together to seek a greater measure of righteousness, of fairness, of inclusion, and of love for our fellow human beings. A story of the ancient rabbis recounts a debate about the proper time for morning prayer. How do we know when the day begins? Asks one sage. Another responds, you know the day has begun when you can tell the difference between a blue thread and a black thread. Another says, no, the day begins when you can distinguish between a dog and a wolf. A third rabbi responds, it will be the dawn of a new day when you gaze upon the face of a stranger and recognize your brother. So may we all look upon all who dwell in this city and know them as our brothers and as our sisters. And let us stride forth into our 401st year as neighbors recommitted to making real Dr. King's ideal of the beloved community. Amen, v'amen.
Thank you, Rabbi, for your thoughtful and inspiring words. And please join me in thanking the members of the Cape Ann Symphony who performed Gloucester composer Robert Bradshaw's Fanfare for Gloucester. And we'll hear more from them later in the program. Sammy Costa on trumpet, Tim Dyke on trumpet, Earl Powers on French horn, Daniel Walker on trombone, Rob Needs on tuba, and Frank Comiega on percussion. And please, a hearty round of applause for the combined honor guard that was specially formed for the Gloucester Overture 2023. Now our attention goes back to O'Malley student Alessandro Schock. Alessandro, please come back to the stage. You started off very well for this historic day, and we thank you for your wonderful rendition of our national anthem. And as your mayor, who is very proud of you and all of the Gloucester Public Schools students, and on behalf of the Gloucester 400 Plus Committee, I'm happy to help you remember this historic day by bestowing upon you your own Gloucester Anniversary Medal. So here you go. And what? And one more thing, I'm going off script here, but I've seen you at a lot of events, and you have a smart suit, and what you need is Gloucester's official seal for your lapel. So I'm giving you my own seal. Okay. Thanks so much. Great job. All right, and this is just the beginning of this year's kickoff. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge all of the elected officials that have helped us out and that are here today. First of all, our school committee members and city councilors who've done so much as we moved along in the 400th and as we continue through the year. And I want to recognize former mayors of Gloucester, Bruce Toby, Mayor Bruce Toby, and Mayor John Bell, if you don't mind standing and waving. Okay, thank you. So we have an exciting year ahead of us, full of events and celebrations to acknowledge this incredible milestone for our community. This is an opportunity for us to reflect on our rich history and culture and to look toward the future and all that our community has to look forward to. We are so fortunate to live in a city full of beautiful natural wonders, historic landmarks, and welcoming residents. As we celebrate this exciting anniversary, I encourage you all to reflect on the pieces of our community that make it so unique and special. And an imperative component of Gloucester as a community moving into its 5th century is recognizing and acknowledging that the land that our ancestors came to hundreds of years ago, lived on, worked on, and built futures on, as we all continue to do today, is the land of the Indigenous Peoples Nation. The town of Rockport, which was Gloucester's Sandy Bay Parish until 1840, is an equal partner in this acknowledgement. All in attendance today, as representatives of both of our communities, and as witnessing participants can attest to the importance of this acknowledgement. Please welcome to the podium Rockport Board of Selectmen member Herman Lilja, and also Isabel Pett, who is going to offer the acknowledgement right now for the land's collective history. So if you could join me now, Herman and Izzy.
Good afternoon. I haven't been here since 1961 when I graduated from Gloucester High. but I know John Bell's out there to remember the same experience I had. Anyway, thank you, Mayor Verga, for inviting me today as representative of Rockwood's Board of Selectmen and on behalf of the Chair, Ross Brackett, to share Gloucester's land acknowledgement that Gloucester and Rockwood collaboratively offered you in Stephen Peters, who is unfortunately not here, and Isabel Pett, who is acting in his behalf. Anyway, of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, here today to represent the Native and Indigenous people whose land we gather on today and on which our communities were built. On behalf of the residents of Rockwood and Gloucester, I offer this statement to Isabel on behalf of the Wampanoag tribe. The city of Gloucester, as well as the former village of Sandy Bay, now known as Rockwood, is located on traditional and ancestral land of the Pawtucket people and their neighbors, the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Nanticoke, and the Wampanoag tribes. We recognize and honor the Native and Indigenous people who have lived on this territory for more than 10,000 years and are here now and will be here for generations to come. We acknowledge our responsibility to include Native people and perspectives across our efforts to share Gloucester's and Rockwood's history, including the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory. During Gloucester's 400th anniversary and looking forward to the future, we seek to collectively expand the visibility of and celebrate the histories of the cultures and stories of the Native and Indigenous peoples of this place. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Isabel Pett with the Gloucester 400. I'm speaking on behalf of Stephen Peters, who is the creative director of Smoke Signals and a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. I genuinely wish to be there in person to listen to the other speakers and commemorate our shared history. However, I cannot control the weather in my ancestral homeland on Cape Cod, which provided a mix of freezing rain and snow today, just as we also cannot control past events. Thankfully, we do have control over how we move forward with that knowledge. I want to open my remarks today by acknowledging that today's event is held on the ancestral homeland of the Pawtucket. These lands lie adjacent to the ancestral homelands of various other Native tribes. Through over 400 years of colonization, war, enslavement, and the forced dispossession of language, land, and culture, the tribal nations that called this land home for millennia were silenced or removed from this place, now referred to as Gloucester, Massachusetts. As a member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, I honor those tribes and hopefully begin the process of healing as we look to bring the sounds and activities of Indigenous peoples back so that they may once again be felt on this land. There's no question that history has not always been kind to the Indigenous people of America. Through periods of colonization that have included sickness, war, slavery, forced assimilation, and the outlawing of our traditions, language, and spirituality, our way of living went silent for generations. It was a system of cultural genocide that was almost successful. Thankfully, my ancestors, along with the ancestors of neighboring Eastern woodland tribes, found the strength to hold on to our culture and pass it down from generation to generation. They've passed it along, allowing me to deliver these words today to commemorate many historical events and celebrate with you the survival of our culture. Know that I do not hold any of you responsible for the events of the past. I only hold you accountable for the future and ask that you move forward with this knowledge to live together in a more humane world. A world where we have compassion for the burden that history has placed on minorities, women, gender, sexuality, and seek solutions to once again lift our neighbors up and celebrate our diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Selectman Lilia, for your participation and recognizing that parts of Rockport land on the island, which until fairly recent history was part of Gloucester, is that of the Indigenous nation. And thank you, Izzy, for filling in for Mr. Peters and sharing his meaningful and educational words. So I'm happy to welcome to the podium a fellow son of Gloucester, someone who has dedicated so many years to serving his community and its residents. Senator Bruce Tarr was born and educated in Gloucester during a tiny slice of Gloucester's 400-year timeline. He went on to higher education and higher aspirations to serve and help the people of Gloucester, Cape Ann, and the surrounding towns, and he has done so since 1991. State Senator Bruce E. Tarr of the 1st Essex and Middlesex districts continues to work with both sides of the aisle to help Gloucester and Cape Ann move forward and grow. We're grateful for his caring and unwavering service, and we are honored that he can be here today in near equal parts as a state senator and as a true son of Gloucester. It has been my honor to begin this overture to 2023. I look forward to an exciting, entertaining, and memorable 2023, marking our 400-year history, and to celebrating our people, their stories, and their rich cultures with you. So now it is my pleasure to welcome Senator Bruce Tarr, who will continue as Master of Ceremonies for the remainder of the program. Somewhere.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon to everyone. It's such an honor to be here with all of you as we embark on this journey to celebrate our nation's most storied and most famous seaport. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your kind words, and I also want to thank you on behalf of all Gloucester and Rockport residents for expressing your care in relaying to the indigenous peoples represented here today by Izzy in that which is so difficult to put into words. As we remember all of those who have come before us, the indigenous people here for thousands of years, our ancestors who emigrated here from all around the world, for whom we owe our existence as well, and those who perished during war and illness, especially during the recent pandemic. I ask you, before giving a warm welcome to the stand-in for Gloucester's former poet laureate, the creator of Gloucester's Writer's Block series and the very successful Poetry Without Paper contest, Gloucester's John Ronan, that you indulge the Overture's Planning Committee as I deliver their words. But before I do, I just want to recognize the significance of the snowstorm that's happening outside, which is so emblematic of Gloucester and creates a metaphor for our entire 400 years, where we could never predict what could happen to us, we would never know, but this community has always found the resilience within its own members to be able to rise to the challenge and move forward and be able to recognize our common virtues and our common goals. And today's program represents that metaphor in so many ways. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Herm Legia for their dedication and the conveyance to our indigenous peoples. You did a remarkable job, and Isabel also for standing in at the very last minute. And I know that all of the expressions that were made here will be conveyed to Mr. Peters in his representative role for the Native and Indigenous people for whom those remarks were intended on behalf of all of us. Now, on to the next segment of our program. Unfortunately, and I'm reading now the words of the Planning Committee, Mr. Ronan, who had been planning to participate in the Overture to 2023 for quite some time, cannot be with us today. Sadly, upon returning from London yesterday afternoon, specifically to participate in today's program, Mr. Ronan learned that he had contacted COVID-19 while abroad. He sends his deepest regret, and he's very sad not to be here. And I know many, if not all of us in this auditorium know John Ronan, and we know how sad he is that he cannot be with us for this historic event. We all send him our well wishes for a speedy recovery, along with the promise for a later opportunity to read his poem, Hymn for Gloucester at 400, in person at another time in 2023. But for today, we have a tremendous stand-in for John Ronan, and that is another son of Gloucester, our former mayor, Bruce Toby. He was chosen by John Ronan to read this poem, Hymn for Gloucester at 400, one of the Gloucester 400 tri-chairs, Bruce is as well, and again, standing in for his friend John Ronan, who personally chose him to read this poem to us this afternoon. Please join me in welcoming to the podium our former mayor and our good friend, Bruce Toby.
Good afternoon. Today I'd like to nominate a gentleman to the roster of Gloucester's finest kind, a fellow by the name of John Ronan. John has served our city long and well as a poet and author, as a reader and presenter, as a keeper of our experiences, past and present, and as an educator and mentor. He has never served us better than in his work, Hymn for Gloucester at 400, through which he commemorates the icons and experiences of a place we call home. I'm honored to read this poem in his stead as he watches these proceedings on television at home in Magnolia. The man at the wheel beholds an ocean. As past the ocean, steady eyes transfix a deeper, distant horizon. The cenotaph dead will tell you it is time. He sees the Normans, Basques, the grand Atlantic banks, Champlain, a Frenchman, presaging Smith's Tragabixander, rechristened quickly the kind of Cape Ann. He sees Gloucester's birth and Fisherman's Field, a lively dog town, early sloops, colonial pride, and commonweal in Blindman's Canal and early schools, in Murray, Rogers, fish and trade. Despite the crush of crown attacks by savage British troops, charades of regal honor, legal tax, until he sees on Lexington Green both minute men and minute women renounce with arms a king and queen, the War of Independence won. The newly minted nation begins as Gloucester's helmsman now admits Italians, Irish, Poles, and Finns, the Scot, the Swede, forgiven Brits, pursuing life and liberty, happiness. Divergent faiths and cultures welcome. Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, the tempest-tossed, rejected, welcome. Where title idlers must start anew, where slowly slave and native claim their rightful freedoms overdue, and hand-me-down hate is shamed. The helmsman looks on peace, years of peace and war, on commerce, art, as sons and daughters succeed ashore, at sea. A watch is ended, a watch begins. As even now he guides with skill this metal man, heroic cast of eye to windward, tacking still the open ocean's future, past. The ebb and flow and undertow of sorrow. Patriot, Andrea Gale. And yet, fiesta, horribles, hope, September schooners under sail. Below the bronze, Atlantic waves anoint the helmsman, his wife, a boy, and a baby. 50 states they awake, our bright and spangled land in convoy. As we, helmsmen, helmswomen, astride with him the foam-flecked deck, converged as one on time's horizon, recite America's prayer the Citizen Pledge. And salt of serious earth, as sea salt hands, acclaiming to fourth and future jubilees, this weatherly granite, Gloucester, proudly stand at history's helm and brave the blustering seas. John, at home, thank you for your work in this piece.
Bruce, thank you so much for sharing John's encompassing and beautifully written poem that truly sets the tone for 2023. Thank you all also for jumping in with little notice to fulfill a friend's wish. John Ronan, we know, is actually watching us right now on 1623 Studios, which is broadcasting this event live. And I think this would be an opportune time for us to let him know, as he is at home, how much we appreciate him and wish he could be here with us. Let's give him a big round of applause. John, we wish you return to better health very, very soon, and we look forward very much to the day when you can be with us for all of these celebrations of this incredible city. Mr. Ronan also has provided us with printed copies of his poem for those who would like one. They'll be available at the Hopes and Dreams table in the lobby during intermission. And Bruce, perhaps that poem could be included in the Gloucester 400 Plus Stories project.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, with thanks to John Ronan, let's also give our gratitude to our former mayor and great civic leader, Bruce Tobey. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Thank you.
Now, you may have heard of Project 351. It was a project that was conceived of by Governor Patrick in around 2011 in his second term. He wanted to do something that would engage youth and would have a positive impact on all of our society across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Project 351 was originally started to celebrate the life and the works of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And since then, when it was a one-day event, it has become a permanent part of the landscape in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Not only was it actively supported by Governor Deval Patrick, but also Governor Charlie Baker, who picked up the torch and ran with it during his administration as well. To the extent that now, Project 351 counts over 4,200 students and alumni in its ranks, and they have touched the lives of over 1 million people in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. How does it do it? Well, quite simply, it selects, through a nominating process of their peers, 8th graders all across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And in fact, just yesterday, the newest class of Project 351 ambassadors was sworn in. It was an amazing event. And representing Gloucester at that event, and here with us today to play a role in our program, is Joey Porcello. He is the 2023 Student Ambassador for Massachusetts Project 351. He's a student at O'Malley Innovation Middle School. And Joey is going to read to us an excerpt from a speech that was given in August of 1923 by former Mayor William J. McGinnis. Please join me in welcoming to the podium our 351 Ambassador for 2023, Gloucester's own, Joey Porcello.
For 300 years, Gloucester men have gone down to the sea in ships and have done business upon the great waters. They have made our fishing industry an honorable calling. What manner of men they were, these men who year after year of the history of Gloucester, who from our very beginning sailed from our harbor over the wide courses of the ocean, have fished upon the banks, have endured the hardships of the seasons, have returned with varying cargoes, sometimes successful, sometimes unsuccessful. have weathered the gales, have been shipwrecked, and finally, on the last voyage, have gone to their eternal sleep on the bed of the ocean. Since 1623, they have come to Gloucester from the countries of the world, from east and west, from north and south, kindred spirits, venturesome, hardy, and courageous. They came to Gloucester as strangers, and they learned to call it home. From all the lands they came, as if drawn by a magnet, men of different races, nationalities, customs, and tongues, always retaining their individualities, they became one in purpose. I did not write the words I just read. The words were taken from a speech given by former Mayor William J. McInnes on August 28, 1923, at an event during Gloucester's 300th anniversary. Though Mayor McInnes's words are as relevant now, at the beginning of Gloucester's 5th century on this land, as they were 100 years ago, we as a community and a country have learned a lot. There is so much more to learn. My family and ancestors, and most in this auditorium, came here as others still do today, from east and west, from north and south, as kindred spirits, adventurous, hardy, and courageous, with various dreams and needs, and with visions for a better future. Men, women, and children still come to Gloucester from many countries in the world. They come to Gloucester as strangers, and they will learn to call this place home. For many reasons, people of different races, nationalities, customs, tongues, talents, and vocations all come to Gloucester. All bring threads of their cultures that weave tightly into Gloucester's ever-changing fabric. Always retaining their individualities, they will become one in purpose. The excerpt from the 1923 speech by former Mayor McInnes that I read earlier will continue to be relevant during Gloucester's future centuries as we move forward together and we all continue to learn, grow, and evolve as a community.
Joey, don't leave. Well, thank you so much, Joey. And this is turning out to be a pretty big weekend for you, and we're so happy that you could take a moment of it to share with us as you embark on your journey as an ambassador for Project 351. Thank you for helping us bring some of our past forward to our present in such an elegantly simple way. You know, I can't help but imagine what Gloucester, her people, and our surrounding ocean will be like in 2048, when Gloucester will have been a community for 425 years, or in 2073, when 450 years of Gloucester will have been written into the record books. My hope is that young people, like you, as they live, work, and raise families, will ensure that the people in their communities continually learn to be caring stewards of the land and oceans they find themselves on and the air that they breathe. On behalf of the Gloucester 400 Plus Committee, I'm pleased to present this Gloucester 400 commemorative medal to you. And Joey, we hope that this helps you to remember this very special day and weekend on your personal Gloucester history timeline, and that it will always remind you of where you came from and what's in your heart. Thank you so much, and congratulations. Thank you. Very good. Okay. Let's thank Joey again as he makes his way off the stage. We very much look forward to everything Joey's going to be doing on our behalf over the next year. And of course, we're so proud of O'Malley Innovation Middle School, and we're so proud of all of our public schools, and Joey's a fine representative of them. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce the next segment of our program and to introduce to you a man who many of you know and most have heard sing and play his original compositions. He's written many songs about Gloucester, and one is a standout, having been designated as the official Gloucester song after Gloucester's 375th anniversary in 1998. This is an important song. It reminds us that we are, as Joey Porcello just reiterated, a community that historically has drawn resources, livelihoods, revenue, research, and innovation, and often sorrow from the ocean. Please welcome to the stage Alan Estes to perform his original composition, Where'd They Go? Alan?
some of it's true. Hey, happy 400th, everybody. Yeah. I got to tell you, I just got back from New Hampshire, and it felt a lot more comfortable coming across the bridge back into town than it did when I left on Friday. You probably all know about that, how that feels. Anyways, back about 25 years or so ago, my friend Frank Tedesco and I sat down after the perfect storm, and we both love Gloucester and love the history of Gloucester, and started writing some songs about Gloucester and Cape Ann. And we call our collection of work Souls of the Sea. Souls of the Sea. And one of our songs that we wrote was voted in unanimously as the official song of the city of Gloucester. And we're very proud of that. And I'm going to play it for you. It's called Where'd They Go? And I can sing loud and play high. And you guys are welcome to join in if you know it. Key of E flat. I don't think they're going to. There's a way that some men go out beyond the harbor's glow, trying to make a living from the sea. But when bitter northers blow, people in the harbor know life is in the hands of destiny. Oh, the cries and the pleas of the women on their knees, praying that their missing fishermen come home. Hear 'em howl, hear 'em wail, for the Andrea gale and the 1,000 sunken fishing boats below. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? But the raging seas refuse to unveil the fatal news, so the broken hearts forever long to know. The fishermen from Gloucester go where the winds of fortune blow, and danger is a sober certainty. But nature brings its tempters low for reaping what they didn't sow, 'cause it's the toll for harvesting the sea. Oh, the cries and the pleas of the women on their knees, praying that their missing fishermen come home. Hear 'em howl, hear 'em wail, for the Andrea gale and the 1,000 sunken fishing boats below. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? And they gather at the church when they've given up the search. Now the loved ones left behind never know. As the years come and go, generations keep harboring hope. Oh,
out beyond the harbor's glow, where courage meets its opportunity. Lonesome foghorns call from home, beacons search the great unknown, to they that go in ships down to the sea. Oh, the cries and the pleas of the women on their knees, praying that their missing fishermen come home. Hear 'em howl, hear 'em wail, for the Andrea gale and the 1,000 sunken fishing goals. When they go, when they go. Oh no, now what?
Thank you so much, Alan. Your song helps us remember and keep the names alive of those who have gone down to the sea in ships. For the generations harboring hope when a ship is overdue, the crew of the Andrea Gale, Thomas Welch, and thousands more men are representative of those who have lost their lives fishing from our port since this community began. Our vast ocean gives to us, and it takes from us, often without balance. It is vitally important that we are grateful and care for the gifts the ocean gives us, and that we care for all of the creatures in it and on it, as well for the ocean itself. The gifts are mysteries of the ocean that sometimes sadden us, continue to unfold, and amaze us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give another great round of applause to Alan Estes. Thanks, Alan. Okay, in just a couple of minutes, you're actually going to get a chance to stretch your legs and walk around for a bit, but we do have some requests for you. So as you get up and walk around and maybe go out into the lobby where you'll find some items for sale from the 400 Plus committee, you'll also, we hope, fill out a sticky note to express your hopes and dreams for Gloucester in 2048. Here's the trick. We want you to do it in just one line, something that would be impossible for me. There's a table in the lobby where you can do that, and we really want to ask you to do that because it is so important as we reflect on the 400 years that we now celebrate. We also think about the 400 years to come. We also want you to stop by that table and perhaps buy some Gloucester 400 related merchandise and a raffle ticket or two for the 2 lobster trap rocking chairs that you saw in the lobby. After all, where else can you buy a piece of furniture that can actually catch lobsters? The winning ticket is going to be drawn late tonight and announced tomorrow. And all of this during our just 15-minute intermission. You can do it. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes. take a moment just to thank all of our performers, Sammy, Tim, Earl, Daniel, Rob, and Frank. Thank you so much. Let's give them another round of applause. I was just informed that Rob is actually among us in our audience. Rob, would you please stand up for a minute so that we can give you a round of applause? How fortunate we are to live in this incredibly beautiful place that has so many talented people, and we're really getting a feel for that today. I see that the microphone is not on. How is that? Thank you for that editorial comment. I saw who you are, and I know where you live. Okay. What would it be without me speaking without a microphone? At any rate, I'm really honored to be able to introduce the next part of our program, and in doing so, to be able to introduce a good friend and colleague, our state representative, Ann Margaret Ferrante. Ann Margaret represents the 5th District, and she was first elected in 2008, and she represents Gloucester, Rockport, Essex, and Manchester by the Sea. And a little bit about her that you should know, and many of you know a lot about her already, but she's the daughter of Joe, a fisherman, and Frances, a school librarian. And I have heard that they are both watching right now. So Joe and Francie, thank you for the gift of Ann Margaret. She grew up in Gloucester, and she attended the Gloucester Public Schools. She graduated from Tufts University with a double major in economics and international relations. She then went on to get a Juris Doctor from Suffolk University and a master's degree in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. And for a while in there, she was even a member of my staff. When she left our staff, she did go on to law school, and she was an attorney for a while in private practice, where she specialized in land use and, importantly, in fisheries law, which is very complicated and so very important that the members of our fishing industry have good legal representation. She's currently the vice chair of the House Committee on Ways and Means. She's a member of the House Committee on Post Audit and Oversight, the House Committee on Operations, Facilities, and Building Security, and the House Committee on Steering, Policy, and Scheduling. Now that's the official documentation about Ann Margaret. But what I want to tell you is how this daughter of Gloucester has so well symbolized the very best of this community. She became empowered with education, something that we value so very much in this community. And she used that education to be able to advance so many of the things that are important to us. For a while in Massachusetts state government, she was actually the executive director of the Massachusetts Fisheries Recovery Commission, which was geared to help re-energize and revitalize our commercial fishing industry. And she's historically worked so hard to make sure that our fishing industry has a strong voice, whether it be in the courts, or whether it be in the legislature, or whether it be on the street corner advocating to her neighbors. Ann Margaret has always been that strong voice that the fishermen need and deserve. But in addition to that, she's also been leading efforts on Beacon Hill and throughout Massachusetts to be able to promote our life sciences industry and science in general in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and she's playing an instrumental role in developing a life sciences cluster right here on Cape Ann. And she's done that in so many different ways, through her work in the legislatures, through building coalitions, through connecting Cape Ann to people all across the state and the country who have the ability to help us realize our dreams for another new chapter in Gloucester's history. But she's done so without ever forgetting where she came from, the critical role that our commercial fishing industry still plays in our economy, but also how important it is to the soul of this community. She is truly a daughter of Gloucester who grew up here, who has grown in so many ways, and who now gives us the very best in representation. She's here for the next part of our program, which is to talk about something that she's been particularly close to, the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute. And when it comes to GMGI, many of us have read in the paper, and it's certainly been heralded by folks in state government and in the federal government. Well, Ann Margaret was there from the very beginnings at coffee tables and dining room tables on Eastern Point into community meeting rooms and boardrooms, and in so many different ways through the incredible arc of growth of GMGI, helping to deliver financing, helping to make the regulatory and legal changes that have been needed to make it thrive, and always providing the inspiration and the motivation for an incredible group of people who have created this unique institution which offers so much hope to change our lives and to change our world. She has truly fulfilled the dreams of her parents, her neighbors, and all of us in the community in the way that she has catalyzed this effort. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming State Representative Ann Margaret Ferranti.
Thank you, Senator, for that kind introduction. And thank you all for being here today in the celebration of our 400th anniversary. The beginning of today's program focused a lot on our past and where we've traveled in the last 400 years to get to this point in time. What I want to do is talk a little bit about the next 100 years and where we see Gloucester going. And that whole train of thought started about 10 years ago. And it started in Joe and Maggie Rose's kitchen. And I know I saw them both earlier here today, and that they're here. And in their graciousness and in what they give to the community, they assembled John Bell, they assembled Bruce Tarr, Greg Verdine, an innovator in biotechnology and life sciences, Mark Vidal, another scientist involved in this space, Diane Chen. And we got together and we started thinking about Gloucester's future. Now, as the humble daughter of a fisherman, and as the humble daughter of both granddaughter of both grandfathers being fishermen, there's a special place in Gloucester for our fishing industry. And there should always be a special place in Gloucester for our fishing industry. But as Senator Tarr mentioned, too many times we've realized within the fishing industry that we needed more data, that we needed more science. And about 10 years ago, we also realized that we were losing an opportunity that the fishing industry had always provided. And that opportunity was for Gloucester High School students to have a job within the industry that paid a decent wage, whether or not the graduate had the opportunity to go to college. And so we started thinking about what industry could be brought to Gloucester that would supplement and assist our fishing industry, but also provide meaningful and well-paying jobs to students who graduated in Gloucester but didn't have the opportunity to go to college or that opportunity just yet. And so from there emerged this idea of a genomics institute, the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute, being founded in Gloucester, and a workforce development program to go along with that to provide three benefits. One, research that would be done here in Gloucester that would answer questions such as how many fish are in the ocean, where spawning grounds were, whether George's Bank cod was one fish stock, was it two fish stock? Was George's Bank and the Gulf of Maine cod really two different stocks? Were they just kind of like cousins? We had all of those questions and we wanted to know. We also wanted the job training program to teach students because, let's face it, throughout Massachusetts, one of the largest growing industries was life sciences and biotechnology. And could we not only do the research here in Gloucester and on Cape Ann, but could we also pull from the students that were graduating from Gloucester, Rockport, Essex, and Manchester, and give them a skill that would earn them a decent wage? And the third was, could we do one better, and could we attract life sciences companies to Gloucester and Cape Ann to create even more jobs? We were able to do that. And before I introduce one of the people who led us down that path, I want to just break for a second, and I want to introduce a student of the Gloucester Biotech Academy that's run by the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute, just to give you a peek of what that academy has been able to do for students here on Cape Ann. So with that, I want to introduce and welcome out Grace Carey. Grace's maiden name was Brancleone. I'm not sure that we can get more Gloucester than Grace Brancleone Carey. And I wanted to introduce her. I want to hand her this microphone because I'm going to take over that one. And I just want to ask you a couple of questions so you can demonstrate, not secondhand by me, but firsthand by you, what the opportunities are that the Biotech Academy presents. Thank you. So why don't, these microphones are always interesting. I'm going to take this off. Okay, it's working. So Grace, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, hello. My name is Grace Carey, and I'm a lifelong Gloucester resident, and I graduated from Gloucester High School in 2010. I'm a daughter of a fisherman, so he would go out for like a week at a time, and I'm very familiar with the fishing industry. And I'm very excited to be at the Gloucester Biotechnology Academy this year.
Excellent. And so tell us, what brought you, how did you hear about the Gloucester Biotech Academy, and what brought you to apply and to attend the academy?
So I graduated with an associate's degree from North Shore Community College in early 2020, and a couple kids I went to high school with were posting about the academy on social media, and I was like captivated by it, and I would like stalk the social media pages, and I applied back then, but with the pandemic and everything, things didn't work out. And then last spring of 2022, John Doyle, the administrative director, emailed me about attending for the 2022 to 2023 cohort, and I was thrilled. I was jumping for joy. I was so excited because going to college for this industry is just daunting and like overwhelming, and I'm very good at hands-on stuff, so I was so excited to have the opportunity.
And so just give us a little peek of what you've learned so far at the academy.
So the first semester is very DNA oriented. We got a piece of fish, white fish, and we got to extract the DNA from it and go through the process of sequencing it. And then at the end, we got to find out if we had cod or a different kind of white fish. And that was very cool.
And then I assume you went home and your father was impressed?
Yes.
That not just by sight, but by DNA, you could identify the fish?
Of course.
That's great. And I'm sure you've heard some of the success stories of folks that have gone to the Gloucester Biotech Academy. I think 80% of the students that go graduate, 90% are placed in jobs. And from what I hear, just last year, there were a number of students whose starting salary outside of the academy was just about mid-70, so about $75,000 a year.
It's
So
incredible.
with that information, just give us a little idea of where you hope to be in a year, and then where you hope to be in 5 years.
So I've always loved science, and being at the academy is right where I want to be. So it's not even like money driven, but like that's helpful. But I hope to be in possibly, so next week we interview for our internships, which is required as the program, as a part of it. And I am hoping to either work at my internship or get a job in the industry for either research or targeted medicine. There's so much potential in this area for biotechnology jobs, and I just am very thrilled at the opportunity. And maybe in 5 years, I could even work at a biotechnology job and have my bachelor's and be the scientist running the experiments and able to achieve that as a goal.
That's terrific. How about a round of applause for Grace? I know one of the themes for today is hopes and dreams for the future, and certainly, Grace, you have us all behind you in achieving your hopes and dreams, and it seems like you're at the right place at the right time with the right attitude to just take hold of it, take the reins of it, and get right there. So congratulations to you, Grace.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for sharing with us.
Oh, of course, thank you.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy, for setting that all up. And Grace, again, thank you for being out here with us and allowing us to use your experience as a peek inside of what it's like to be at the Gloucester Biotech Academy. And I love that you're sporting the Gloucester Biotech Academy wear there.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So when you hear Grace talk and you hear that 6 years pass, you think, and you might think, and you'd be deceived to think this, that it was just so easy to have all of this happen. There was a team that had to be put in place. There was a leader that was needed in this effort of establishing GMGI, and all of that work needed to be done. And so going back to Joe Rose's and Maggie Rose's kitchen table, we were having the discussion, and Greg Verdine, who's an I think they call him a serial entrepreneur because he researches, he discovers, and then he puts out into startups these ideas and these theories that he has. And I thought Greg was pretty accomplished, but when we sat down, Greg pulled me aside and he said, there's a person that you need to get who can make this happen. And at that point, it was just an idea. And I said, who is that person? And he said, well, that person's Dr. David Wald, and he's over at Tufts. And I thought, okay, I'm the state rep, got Tufts, it's my alma mater, should be able to do this. Let me get on the computer and let me learn a little bit about David Wald. And one of the stories, and I'm not exaggerating, one of the stories that I came across when I Googled him was from Time magazine. And I stopped and I thought to myself, okay, this guy's a big deal. Time magazine reporting on David Wald. So let me see what Time magazine had to say. And Time magazine said basically that if there was anybody who could change the landscape of how we treat cancer, and perhaps in his space and in his work, figure out how more people survive with cancer. There were 5 people in the world that could do this, and one of them was David Walt. And I don't want to put pressure on him by saying cure cancer, but I think that was in the article. And so imagine me at my little computer at my little desk thinking, okay, so we got this idea of where we want to lead Gloucester. I have to meet with this gentleman who Time magazine wrote such glowing things about, and explain to him that I'd really like him to take on this project that we're looking on. So in my dilly-dally and getting ready to pick up the phone and make the call, I looked up some other things. And not only did Time magazine say that about him, but I learned that he was a member of the faculty at the Harvard Medical School and the Department of Pathology at Brigham and Women's Hospital. Not bad. He's a member of the Weiss Institute. Pretty impressive. He's a Howard Hughes Medical Institute professor. Okay? And he's also the scientific founder of Illumina and Quantarex. Now, I want to put into words what it means to be the scientific founder of Illumina. First, those who keep score on the NASDAQ, I think Illumina is the second largest life sciences company on that index. That in itself would be impressive, but what was more impressive to me, it's the company that allows doctors to immediately sequence your DNA to know why your body's behaving the way it is. Again, perspective. My mother back in 2004 had a massive cardiac arrest due to pulmonary emboli, something the doctors hadn't seen, even at Mass General. And it took 1 week to take her DNA, to send it off, to get it back, to understand how to treat her. For those of you who are experienced medical crises, you know how frustrating and how long a week can be, especially when the doctors say, we're not sure we can keep your loved one alive without knowing how to treat what's happening. Because of David Walt and his company, that can now be done in a matter of a half hour to an hour. Think about that impact. And so the group looked, and I think because I was from Tufts, they all pointed to me and said, okay, go ahead, call them. Let's get them signed up. So I enlisted the good help of my friend Bruce Tarr, Senator Tarr, and we put together a presentation for a man who's published 300 papers as an inventor or a co-inventor and claims an additional 80 patents as a co-inventor. And he's on a multitude, just Google him, he's on a multitude of scientific advisory boards that would impress anybody. And so Senator Tarr and I practiced our presentation to get him to come to Gloucester, I don't know, for at least a week and a half. And then we finally met with him. We presented the idea. We were so proud of ourselves because he looked interested. And he said, yes, I'm going to do it. And the senator and I said, and we're just curious, what part of the presentation sold you? And he said, when you said Gloucester, because my wife and I have a summer home in Rockport, and we live there part-time. So it's a great honor, it's a great pleasure to introduce you to our friend David Walt, not only our friend, but our neighbor. And when you think, to put this in perspective, this introduction and the man that I'm introducing you to put it in perspective, those of us that grew up in Gloucester and have moved to Gloucester and have taken an interest in Gloucester's history, know that Gloucester was based on the discoveries of great inventors. There was John Hayes Hammond, there was Clarence Birdseye. At the 500th anniversary of Gloucester, I actually think I know that the state representative will be sitting up here talking about the next great inventor, but within the names of Hayes Hammond and within the name Birdseye, there will be the name David Wald. David, please come out here and join us, and my deepest appreciation to this gentleman. Thank you. Whoops, you go right here.
And I know I'm going to have to adjust this. And Margaret, thank you for the amazing introduction. And also thank you to the organizing committee for this incredible honor to speak at this 400th celebration. The committee asked me to speak about what will Gloucester look like in 100 years. I plan to provide a glimpse into the future, but as you heard, I'm a scientist, I'm a professor, so you're also going to get a bit of a science lesson. As you heard, I'm one of the co-founders of GMGI, along with Mark Vidal, Sherry Zisick, and Greg Verdine. We had a vision for Gloucester that it could stay true to its marine heritage while diversifying the economy by harvesting data from the sea. This approach would enable Gloucester to participate in the knowledge economy and tap into the resources of the Boston-Cambridge biotech ecosystem, the world's acknowledged hub for biotechnology and life sciences. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to know Gloucester. I'm not a son of Gloucester. I grew up in Michigan, the Great Lake state, freshwater. And I went fishing with my dad every Wednesday during the summer on his day off. He was a salesman, starting when I was 5 years old. We'd get up before dawn, rent a rowboat, and fish on one of the many lakes in the area. So fishing is something I've done all my life, and I still do. When I was 12, we took a trip and visited Boston. We visited my uncle, who happened to play bassoon in the Boston Symphony. One of the places that we visited on that trip was Gloucester, and I even have a photo of me at 12 years old in front of the fisherman statue. After my father passed away a few years ago, I was going through some of my parents' photos, and I found a photo of my mom and dad in front of the fisherman statue, dated the year before I was born. So who knows? Perhaps I was even conceived here. A few years after I moved to the Boston area, I bought my first boat in 1982. It was a used boat, and I trailered it everywhere: the South Shore, New Hampshire, the other Cape, and Gloucester. I'd get out of work at 6 p.m., and I'd trailer the boat to the high school ramp. I think it's that direction, right there, right out in the back. This was not the new ramp. This is the old ramp. I think most of you remember that if you ever trailered a boat. Low tide, there were exposed rocks that you had to be negotiated. Often, if the tide wasn't perfect, you'd have to back your car in so the tailpipe was bubbling in the seawater. You'd go through exhaust systems just to get the boat off the trailer. But I found myself kept coming back to Gloucester. Now, these were pre-GPS days. I learned about almost every submerged rock the hard way, going through many reconditioned propellers. And anyone who's fished here in the old days remembers what I'm talking about. From Anne Margaret's introduction, you heard about how I first got involved with GMGI. We received funding from the state to do that codfish study to identify which codfish subpopulations there were in Gulf of Maine and Georges Bank using genomics. What is genomics? We've heard that word a couple times. So let me take you back to the early 1990s. There were biologists who proposed something called the Human Genome Project. That was intended to sequence the entire human genome, that is, human DNA, our chromosomes. At the time, the technology didn't exist to accomplish this task. But through an international collaboration involving 40 very large laboratories and thousands of people, the first human genome was published about 13 years after the project was started, and at a cost of over $3 billion. Now, as I said, the effort took thousands of people. By the time the Human Genome Project was finished, the $3 billion project, if you started it again, the technology had advanced to the point where if you did it again, it would cost about $100 million, okay? So about a 30-fold decrease in cost. But within 10 years of completion of the Human Genome Project, the technology had advanced so dramatically that to do a human genome more accurately, it would only cost $10,000. Today, a single benchtop instrument is capable of sequencing over 100 human genomes, 100 people, for $200. Never before in the history of human advancement has anything ever advanced so dramatically in such a short period of time. Even the computer microchip industry, with its incredible advances, took nearly 4 decades to achieve the same level of advancement. Now, these technologies have allowed the sequencing of many humans, probably about 1 million people so far, as well as many of Earth's other life forms, plants, animals, bacteria, viruses. Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute, GMGI, was founded on the idea that this amazing technology could be brought to bear to both understand the diversity of organisms residing in the ocean and also to obtain better data about fish populations. GMGI is applying genomics to a multitude of potential outcomes. For example, discovering new molecules from unique marine organisms that may lead to important drugs for cancer and neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's. To understand the biological pathways in marine organisms that may lead to better understanding of how to strengthen our immune systems so that we can fight infection better, and collecting genomic data about fish populations that will better enable us to more accurately obtain information so regulations are based on science and not on random fish trawls. But research discoveries are not sufficient. We must be able to transfer these discoveries and scale them so they benefit everyone. A second goal of GMGI is to convert these discoveries into something called intellectual property. This is most commonly in the form of what you're all familiar with, patents. Patents protect inventions and provide exclusive access to commercialize those inventions. GMGI hopes that some of its discoveries will lead to patents. This is the goal of the kind of research GMGI is pursuing. It's called use-inspired research, which was exemplified by Louis Pasteur. His research led to the discovery of microbes and that they are responsible for fermentation and that they also can lead to the cause of disease, infection. This discovery led to the process that bears his name, pasteurization, which made food safer and has saved many lives, sterilizes food. Similarly, GMGI is also pursuing use-inspired research. For example, we are pursuing better ways to detect harmful algae blooms, also known as red tides. The longevity research of our science director, Andrea Bodner, who's in the audience here, may enable us to understand how long-lived marine organisms like lobsters and sea urchins can survive in hostile environments, but resist infection and seemingly live without signs of aging. I'll have more to say about GMGI and its research as we now explore the main focus of my talk, Gloucester's future. What will Gloucester look like in 2123? This is a tough question because 100 years ago, in 1923, at the 300th celebration, Gloucester was more like it was in 1623 than it is today. Its economy was focused on fishing and granite. The world had fewer than 2 billion people. Last year, we passed 8 billion. So it's really hard to predict 100 years into the future, considering how much life has changed just in the last 30 years. 30 years ago, no cell phones, no email. There were satellite phones. That was it. Today, think about it, artificial intelligence. We just read this past week. It's writing term papers for college students. It can accurately predict protein structures. It can beat the best chess players, predict the weather. It can create art. It can read x-rays better than many radiologists. Most of these innovations have occurred in the last 10 years. I'm a huge fan of science fiction. I prefer Star Trek, not the post-apocalyptic type of sci-fi. Aside from the aliens, which hard to predict whether they'll be around in 100 years, think about how people live in that future. Everyone, this is Star Trek sci-fi, has food and shelter. Energy is not an issue anymore. They got those dilithium crystals. Diseases are rare, and most medical conditions are treatable. Because everyone has their basic needs met, crime is low. But these depictions, they don't provide specifics about how we achieve this type of future. In 2123, some of what's depicted on Star Trek will likely be reality. Surgery will be performed by robots. Cancer will likely be a disease that is detected early and treated with personalized drugs. It will be a disease that is managed rather than one that is often a death sentence. How will Gloucester fit into this future? Allow me to make a few predictions. I'm going to focus on three major areas: food, medicine, and energy. First, food. The ocean will be fully mapped. In fact, we're probably going to map the 80% of the ocean that has not been mapped in detail within the next 20 years. But there's a different type of mapping in addition to the advanced imaging systems that will provide us with a full high-resolution contour map of the oceans. Today, we're using genomic technologies to find DNA that's left behind by fish swimming through water. True. Just as people leave traces of DNA from their skin and their hair wherever they go, widely used in forensics, fish leave behind traces of DNA when they swim through the water. By looking at both the images and correlating them with this, what's called environmental DNA, we will be able to identify very precisely where fish are located, as well as where and when they are spawning, with a high degree of accuracy. We will even be able to assess the age structure of a fish population by looking at genetic markers that correlate with aging. No more guessing about fish populations by doing trawls and using sonar in a limited area. We know fish move. Just because they were there last year doesn't mean they will be there today. We will take the guesswork out of fish assessment and put it on solid scientific footing. Before we set up GMGI, Ann Margaret Bruce Tarr got us set up with the fishermen. We listened to them, and they told us, we just want the best data. We know where the when fish are plentiful and when they're scarce. We're out on the water all the time. We don't want regulators telling us not to fish because they use flawed assessment methods. They welcomed the new genomics technologies as a way to collect better data, and we continue to work with them. They help us collect samples of both water and fish that are providing us with the genomic data that we need that could not be obtained any other way. This capability will enable precision fishing, catching fish where they are plentiful and avoiding fishing when they are spawning or when they encounter some environmental challenge. With such a large population of people, the demand for wild fish will be substantial, and fishers will be able to command excellent prices for their valuable catches. In my vision of the future, wild fisheries will play a significant role in the Gloucester of 21-23. But with 10 to 11 billion people on the planet, wild fisheries will not be able to meet the demand. I know there are many out there who may not want to hear what I'm about to say, but please listen with an open mind to my full prediction before you start throwing tomatoes and booing, okay? That's all I ask. My overall message is Gloucester should embrace the entirety of the fish food ecosystem. Let's not stop only with wild fisheries, but build a diverse economy based on feeding fish and seafood to the planet. This is where another technology comes in, biomanufacturing. Biomanufacturing means growing living organisms, typically cells. We already do biomanufacturing in the form of beer production. Just add some sugar and grains, inoculate it with some yeast. The yeast convert the sugars into alcohol, and they impart flavors to the water. Voila, you have beer. Feed yeast sugar, they make alcohol. That's biomanufacturing. How does biomanufacturing relate to fisheries? Even today, it's simply a fact that with 8 billion people on the planet, the amount of fish required to feed so many people exceeds the ability of wild fisheries to meet the full demand. Aquaculture will be and is part of the mix. In fact, aquaculture and fish farming today account for 52% of all the fish consumed globally, and is expected to be at 60% in just 7 years, 2030. As I just said, wild fisheries will play a role in Gloucester's future. But why not capitalize on the entire fish and seafood ecosystem? We're not going to do aquaculture here. Our coastline is not conducive to fish farming, but it is a huge market globally. Let's create value from it here. Aquaculture provides farm fish and shellfish, but such practices are fraught with issues such as pathogens, viral and bacterial infections that can wipe out an entire fish farm in a matter of days or even hours. Gloucester can play a role here. GMGI is already developing rapid diagnostic tests based on genetic analysis that can help catch these types of diseases early. In addition, there will be a need to stop the overharvesting of wild fish that are used as food in aquaculture. This practice is a wasteful use of wild fish stocks. The fishermen know this here. It takes more than a pound of wild fish to produce a pound of farm fish. Doesn't make sense. If we stop harvesting wild fish for fish farming, there would be no more food for wild fish. There would be more food for wild fish. Here too, Gloucester can play a role. We should be able to develop feed that replicates the nutritional value of the wild fish used today and put an end to this wasteful practice. We can use biomanufacturing to produce fish feed that is just as nutritious as for farm fish, but based on inexpensive feedstocks, such as plants, and even the waste yeast from beer production. We just added a new state-of-the-art laboratory at Gloucester Biotech Academy, you just heard about that, to train our students in the important new area of biomanufacturing. But biomanufacturing is more, so much more, than just fish feed. We can use the same cells to make valuable products like vaccines and pharmaceuticals that can treat cancer. Gloucester is poised to lead in this area. We have biomanufacturing here already. We have proximity to the leading pharmaceutical companies who will be transitioning their products from the chemicals that used to be used as drugs over the last 150 years, and we're going to transfer that to biopharmaceuticals, such as proteins and enzymes and antibodies that are much more specific and less toxic. With a trained workforce and the inevitable innovation in this area, we can create tremendous number of jobs and economic value here. Another area that will clearly develop is biodiscovery. I touched briefly on this topic earlier. The oceans are a source of novel organisms. They can live in extreme environments where the pressures are so great that terrestrial organisms would simply be crushed to death. They live and thrive in hot waters coming from hydrothermal vents, underwater volcanoes. We can learn so much from these organisms, such as how they adapt to their environment. Some of these adaptations may help us understand the underlying biological mechanisms that could be of value for therapeutic interventions, how to make our immune systems more resilient, how to avoid diseases such as cancer, how to live longer and healthier lives, even into old age. But there is another entire class of organisms that promises new discoveries, microbes, microorganisms. The ocean's creatures range from viruses to bacteria to the largest mammals on the planet. These organisms have biochemical pathways that produce novel compounds that may be useful as new antibiotics, anti-cancer agents, flavors, cosmetics, and nutritional supplements. Genomics will enable us to discover these pathways and provide a wide range of new molecules that can benefit human health and improve our lives. Finally, marine genomics can help the world with sustainability, the health of our planet. The oceans comprise 3/4 of the planet, but account for a much larger percentage of the Earth's biosphere, the area inhabited by life. The oceans help absorb carbon dioxide, produce oxygen, drive the water cycle that's responsible for rain, that gives us access to fresh water. We must protect this valuable resource. Our lives depend on it. Part of the sustainability portfolio is energy, as an example. The ocean is a tremendous source of energy. We can harvest energy from the sea in multiple forms. Tides move tremendous volumes of water twice a day. Here in Gloucester, our typical tide is about 9-10 feet. By capturing some of that water and then releasing it when needed, one can extract hydropower energy. This is big engineering. We have some big engineering companies here. Another route to energy is through algae. Algae are capable of photosynthesis. The amount of oxygen produced by algae in the oceans, I looked this up for this talk, is more than 50% of the total oxygen that's produced by plants. So plants on the terrestrial part of the planet produce less than 50%. The ocean produces more than 50%. Algae can also produce oils that can be turned into fuel and chemicals. We'll need these materials to provide liquid fuels, such as jet fuel, which can't be replaced by electric power. There's no way you're going to be able to fly a plane on a battery with hundreds of people on it. So here's another place where biomanufacturing will play a role. Perhaps not here in Gloucester, where the sun doesn't shine every day. Today's a good example. But discoveries and technologies developed here can be licensed out, and the innovations developed here will provide solutions to the energy challenges ahead. Our town's focus on the sea gives us a competitive advantage in this area. So, what's my vision for Gloucester in 21-23? It'll be Gloucester's 500th and GMGI's 110th. GMGI will be larger, perhaps having its headquarters on the harbor and a more significant laboratory and teaching academy presence at Blackburn and other sites around town. If we're successful, there will also be biotechnology and life sciences companies and other companies both on the harbor, those requiring access to water for their operations, and also companies in industrial parks that have resulted from research discoveries. Drugs from the sea, companies producing diagnostic tests and monitoring systems for water quality, companies producing seafood by manufacturing, perhaps even a headquarters for up-to-the-minute data that provides information to fisheries around the globe. I predict there will be a robust fleet of fishing vessels harvesting healthy populations of wild fish that look and taste like the fish caught by the fishers of 1623. The prices commanded for these wild fish, as I said before, will reflect the high value people will place on them. The harbor will be bustling. Technologies developed here will also contribute to sustainable aquaculture, all part of the mix necessary to meet the demand for fish in the future and food in the future. In medicine, Gloucester will be responsible for new drugs discovered from marine organisms and new therapies derived from our understanding of our marine relatives. Energy will be plentiful and sustainable due to innovations discovered here. Gloucester will also be known for having one of the best trained workforces on the planet. Gloucester Biotech Academy has become a national leader in workforce training for the bioeconomy. As our workforce training expands over the next few years, we will begin to see companies moving here simply to take advantage of the skilled people who reside here. They will want to be where the talent is located. Our unique mix of skilled workers, biotech technicians, scientists, engineers, as well as the historical skill sets of people proficient with all the things needed to build and repair boats and heavy machinery, mechanics, electricians, plumbers, glass and metal workers. I predict Gloucester will be thriving with a diverse economy that recaptures its heyday, as reflected in the marvelous art of Fitzhenry Lane on display at Cape Ann Museum. Gloucester is steeped in tradition, coupled with innovation. Shipbuilding, fishing, ice making, wireless remote control, frozen foods. I'm excited to see all the innovations that will be created by both the blue and the bioeconomies that are in their nascent stage and that will emerge over the next century. Our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and their descendants will benefit from its diversified economy. The town will benefit from the city will benefit from the tremendous return to its tax base from the economic resurgence, and Gloucester will be known around the world as a bastion of marine innovation. Thank you.
Isn't he fabulous? All right, along those lines, Grace, if you can just pop over here for just a second. We want to thank you for coming and sharing your experience with us. And there's a medal from the 400th anniversary of our celebration today. And the same for you, David. Thank you for being, both of you, thank you for being such wonderful representatives and participants in our community.
You know, we've talked a lot about, in this program so far, the amazing and the talented people that we have on Cape Ann, and there can be no doubt in anyone's mind that David Walt is one of them. His glimpses that he just gave of his world, a world that will enrich and make healthier and create new jobs and new careers. His vision will continue to excite a generation, a new generation, that will utilize maritime genomic science in ways that most of us cannot even imagine. We are so fortunate as we embark on our 401st year to be able to see a piece of that world, to understand the excitement and the potential that it holds. And we are so lucky to have David Walt among us, someone who, in our own neighborhoods, is changing the world to heal and cure disease and make our lives so much better. David Walt, thank you once again, not only for being here today, not only for doing what you do in the world of science, but for being someone who shares his talents with us here on Cape Ann. David, let's give you another round of applause. Thank you so much. So, not long ago, members of the Gloucester's Overture to 2023 committee, some of whom also worked on the 350th and 375th anniversaries, they became curious thinking about what Gloucester might look like in 2048, when their children and grandchildren, even those yet to be born, would be in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and maybe older. The committee members had dreams and hopes of what their children and grandchildren would find in a future Gloucester, and they thought that other residents might wonder the same thing. Very recently, they began to ask residents what their hopes and dreams for Gloucester in the future might be. Ultimately, many of you were asked the same as you entered the high school today and at our intermission, and many of you obliged. Maybe this will become an ongoing 2023 project in which many of the hopes and dreams and thoughts from today and a few from Miss Clayton's third grade class at East Veteran School will become part of that effort. And I do have, and this is a bit like the Academy Awards, I have some selected sticky notes. And I'm going to share them with you. So, and by the way, most of you kept to a single sentence. I am so impressed. I'm sure there are probably some of these sticky notes in your pocket with more thoughts. So, 1, cultural workers, teachers, and caregivers are supported for all they do for us. Jobs and houses for all. A diverse and inclusive culture. That Gloucester maintains its commercial working harbor. I hope that Gloucester always keeps the grit. Learn from the past. In 2048, I see Finn and Rhett beginning their adult adventures. I hope they never forget where they came from. One that was probably inscribed on a stone or something like this when the original settlers came to Gloucester in 1623, and has probably been repeated every 50 years or so. Easily accessible public toilets. Those are just a sharing of some of the sticky notes, and last but not least, stewardship of our ocean and its living creatures. Wonderful thoughts to think about, aren't they? Our future, when you think about those thoughts, and you think about the fact that those single sentences were composed in just a few minutes out here, looks very good. And I'm sure we all have more thoughts and similar thoughts, and I hope they'll all be shared throughout this celebration of our 400th anniversary. And as we think about our 400th anniversary, we can't help but think of all of our ancestors who came before us, the indigenous and those who came here literally from countries around the world. How fortunate we are to be here in this moment. We descend in gratitude from tenacious people who had dreams, worked hard, and made sacrifices for a future better than their own present was at the time. As we look forward with hope to what the future brings for us and our descendants, let's remember to keep close in our hearts and minds the diligence, faith, and can-do spirit our ancestors had, as their eyes did looking forward to the future. Faith, diligence, and fortitude, as well as the previous compositions by Robert Bradshaw, were played exceptionally well by our guest members of the Cape Ann Symphony. Let's give them another round of applause for their incredible performance today. And in a preview of coming events, be sure to put the Cape Ann Symphony's date on your calendar, Friday, July 28th, 2023, where there will be an open-air Pops concert at Stage Fort Park to mark Gloucester's 400th year. And paying careful attention to one of those sticky notes, there will be publicly accessible bathrooms. That free concert is going to include Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, one of my personal favorites, and the debut of yet a new composition by our composer, Robert Bradshaw. Though I'm very happy to be with you here today, there were days in the recent past when none of us could foresee today's program even taking place, yet we are here, gratefully. The past 3 years have been certainly game changers for all of us. And the poem, To a Mouse, by Scottish poet Robert Burns states, "The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry." Planning a year of commemorative events and programs is not easy at any time, and yet our Plymouth, Provincetown, and Weymouth friends and neighbors to our south know this all too well. We're grateful for their leadership, the collaborations they forged with Gloucester, and for the grace that they showed to all of Massachusetts during these past few years as they planned their commemorations. The Gloucester 400+ Committee has been diligently moving forward for a few years, even through the pandemic. The ever-changing and expanding committee evolved and is still moving forward to honor and commemorate Gloucester's people, indigenous and those who emigrated past and recently, and archive all of their stories. Our collective thanks go to the many volunteers and employees of Gloucester 400+ and the Gloucester Celebrations Corporation for all of the work they have done to get us to 2023. A huge thank you to all who worked to make today's program happen, and see the small village that they've become listed on the back page of your program. We want to thank you as well to the many individuals, groups, businesses, and organizations who are working to make all of 2023's events and programs happen. And before we round out the program, I know that our Cape Ann Symphony members have another piece that they're going to play for us, and I want to give them the opportunity to do that right now. Diligence, and Fortitude, composed by our very own Robert Bradshaw. Thank you again so much, Robert, and thank you. Thank you to our members of the Cape Ann Symphony Orchestra. You have given us just a taste of what we're going to see in July, and we are so very excited about that. We look forward to that wonderful program. Again, mark your calendars right now and make sure you get a parking space early. There are many organizations and businesses who've helped in today's program, and most of those are in your program. But we want to thank 3 businesses that contributed to today's event, but they did not get published in the program. So in 2 lovely ways, we're grateful to Sage Floral Studios in Gloucester, and in yummy ways, by providing light refreshments you'll enjoy shortly in the cafeteria, Cafe Cecilia on Main Street, and Gloucester's Dunkin' Donuts franchise and the Braga family for their wonderful contributions. And I am reminded to let you know that there are still a lot of things to be eaten and cookies to be consumed and coffee to be drunk in the cafeteria. So we certainly hope that you'll stick around and do that and wait for the snow to melt maybe so you can drive home. A collective thanks to all of our businesses and all of the organizations who have been part of this once-in-a-lifetime event. You all represent Gloucester very well, and let's give you another round of applause. You know, just a minute ago we heard Faith, Diligence, and Fortitude, written by Robert Bradshaw, and as I recall, it was for the dedication of the Fishermen's Wives Memorial. An anthem that so very well speaks to what we're all about here in Gloucester. For 400 years, we've had faith, diligence, fortitude. We believed in each other. We've supported each other. We have been writing chapters in the history of this great nation for 400 years. It hasn't been easy. And in fact, at times, it's been very, very hard. We've suffered losses collectively as a community. There's been incredible sacrifice. There have been the ups and downs that history invariably brings. But throughout all of it, the people who call this rocky port home have reminded us every single time of what makes us great. What makes us great is the way that we see each other as a resource, that we celebrate each other when we accomplish something, that we support each other in the darkest of times, and that we live to ensure that the history of this great place, when it's being written by the pen that's in our hand, will continue to be written in a way that made our ancestors proud and will make those who come after us inspired and motivated and proud of us as well. That is our obligation as we think about these 400 years, and we have so much to be proud about. Surely the future will hold its challenges as well. It won't be easy, and we'll be called upon to respond in our own ways to the things that we have to confront in our own lives. But just as the beacon at the lighthouse on Eastern Point continues to show the way, continues to shine bright, continues to remind us all of our bearings, we can continue to write the history of this great port. And we can do so in a way that's inclusive and equitable and prosperous for every single person who calls Gloucester home. Because for every single person who calls Gloucester home, the values of faith and diligence and fortitude are indelibly written in our hearts. That's what makes this the greatest port in the United States of America. Before we wrap up the program, I do want to, and we will end with 2 benedictions, so I ask you to stay tuned for that. But something that's not in the script, and I hope that you'll join me in this bit of a surprise. I want to ask of the many people that have been involved in putting all this together, and they have been incredible. You've seen how wonderful the program that they've created has been. But one person deserves our special thanks, and I want to ask Lynn Parisi to come out here on stage and take a bow and be properly recognized. I won't tell you what Lynn just said to me at the microphone. It's probably not for public consumption. But she has been amazing, and we owe you a huge debt of gratitude, and we are all so appreciative of what you put into this today.
Thank you. It was a team effort. Team, back in the booth, team out in the lobby, team everywhere. They're all listed on the back of the program. Whether they're here today or not, they were a huge help, because this does not happen without a village. Do we have an awesome village or what? Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I do think we actually took her a little bit by surprise, so congratulations. To formally close our memorable entry into this beginning of 2023, I ask you to please join me in welcoming Reverend Rona Tyndall of the West Gloucester Trinitarian Church and Pastor Cody Ayton of the Freedom Church, and they will offer their benediction prayers, which will carry us further into our 5th century as a community.
Last but not least, the notoriously long-winded preachers. As we look back over our history, may we do so with eyes and hearts wide open to hidden truths and untold stories. As we stand in the present moment, may we do so with humility, warm cooperation, and openness to wonder, discovery, and awe. As we move into the future, may we do so guided by deep mindfulness and care for earth and ocean, cityscape and ocean space, all things now living and the generations who will one day reap what we now sow. And now deep peace of the running wave to you, deep peace of the flowing air to you, deep peace of the quiet earth to you, deep peace of the shining stars to you, deep peace of the gentle night to you. Moon and stars pour healing light upon you, deep peace of the light of the world to you, deep peace of the Son of Peace to you.
Let us pray. God, as the ceremony comes to a close, we want to thank you for your goodness and your mercy. Our community has a rich history and has evolved over the centuries. We've had times of suffering, we've had times of prosperity, and we are thankful that through it all, God, that you've stayed the same and you've stayed faithful to us. So as we leave this place tonight, we ask that you give us many more years as a community together. But more specifically, we ask, God, that you would give our families favor to thrive and to grow. I ask that you bless our companies. I ask that you bless the industries in which we work. May you care for our children, and may this next century be our most prosperous. But we also ask that you help us care for one another. May you give us the resources and the wisdom that we need to see the elderly thrive, the addicts gain freedom, and those with mental health issues get the help that they need and deserve. And most of all, I ask that you help us remember you and your goodness. In the years to come, I do pray that we wouldn't be known as a community for just our great companies or innovation or social causes, but instead be known for a true, authentic love for you, Lord. It is in Jesus' name that I pray, and I ask these things. Amen.